We have reached the part of the podcast where we're going to be talking some horse racing. Big weekend of horse racing with the Pegasus World Cup down at Gulfstream. Who better to come on than Gino Buccola, host of the That's What G Said podcast. Gino, how you doing today, my man?
Man, doing well. It's a really good card on Saturday at Gulfstream. Sometimes, the big days can have some shorter fields. There'll be a really heavy favorite in a race that some horses don't want to face. You'll get a field of 5, a couple of them throughout the card. 13 races on Saturday at Gulfstream. Every single race has at least 9 horses entered. And I think from races 6 on, that's when all the stakes races start. All of them have at least 10. The late pick 4, all fields of 12. 12, 12, 12, 12. Just huge fields.
Great races, some opportunities in the pick 4s, pick 5s, pick 6s. Warm Heart with Ryan Moore and Aidan O'Brien is the morning line favorite in the World Cup Turf Invitational Stakes. And he came up just short in the Breeders' Cup Filly and Mare Turf. Literally just ran in December in Hong Kong. Will the travel there, is that something we should look at when we cap this race? Is that going to affect his chances tomorrow in the race?
That's a very good notice by you, Eric, because Warm Heart is, as you mentioned, she's a filly. She was in the Filly and Mare Turf. So she just turned 4 right now. And then a couple weeks ago is a New Year. So she's a newly turned 4-year-old filly. And the race that she's in, it is the turf. She's not in the Filly and Mare Turf. She's facing the boys in this race. So first off, she's facing the boys and older horses, like older boys. She's also doing it after that travel. Look at her travel before. She was in Ireland. She was in the UK. We saw her race at York and then at Longchamp. She comes to Santa Anita. From Santa Anita, she goes to Sha Tin, and then she comes back here. That's a ton. Having to do all of that and be at a very short price, she's definitely a favorite that I think you're right for taking a shot against and maybe playing underneath. She's very, very classy. So I could see her being, if the way I would try to beat her, she wouldn't be a horse that I don't like at all completely. If you're playing tries, exactas, I could super stuff like that. I could see her being in, the 2nd and 3rd, 4th spots, but on the win end, she might be a horse that's worth taking a swing against.
Could she be a horse where we play everyone on top and then her underneath in an exacta?
I don't necessarily know if that would be the best wager, because she could as equally run like finish 3rd, finish a close 4th, especially on the grass like this. I think you would maybe find a price or 2 horses that you would like in the race, and then you can use her underneath along with a few others. I think she's a major player at her best, right? If she shows up and everybody in this race showed up and they ran her best, she probably wins. But like with any football game or basketball game, you have a favorite. Do you have reasons to poke holes in them? Well, we do. All of this travel, having to deal with facing the boys now, and she's just turning again older. She did face older, obviously, in the Filly and Mare Turf, but this is just going to be a different ball game for her with all that travel. She's also probably best going a little bit longer. If you notice her races, you see the bulk of them at 1.5 miles, 1.5 miles, 1.25 miles. And this is at 1 1/8 miles. So just a little bit different. They might be going a little bit quicker early than she's used to. The tempo just might be different. So plenty of reasons, I think, to play against her, Eric.
An interesting long shot in this race from your neck of the woods out in California is Web Slinger. Morning line, we're looking at a very juicy 15 to 1. Ran 2nd at the Hollywood Derby, losing by a neck. Could this horse be a long shot? Could this horse shock the world? Is this horse live in this race?
Web Slinger is my top pick in the race. I sent you a little write-up. You sent me some questions that you were going to possibly ask. And then I just sent you that completely separate, some of the horses that I was looking at. And Web Slinger was one of the horses that I gave out. It was my top pick in this race. What I love about Web Slinger, you know what you're going to get from him. He is a deeper closer. but he will always make his late rally. He will always sit back, and he'll always pass half the field, most of the field. In his last 10 starts, he has 3 wins, 3 seconds, and 2/3. And the other time he didn't run well, he finished 4th, and he was only beaten the length that day. He always shows up. He just needs the races to have a little bit of early speed, a contested early pace, and that'll set up for him. Now, if you look at the way this race shapes up, you do have from the outside Main Event, who's probably the one to catch. And Main Event just went wire to wire in his last 2 races. So he's really sharp, and he will try to do that. I do feel like in this race, there are 2 or 3 others that will probably make life difficult for Main Event. So the way you want to look at it is Main Event, Webslinger, 2 opposite styles of horses, right? So if Main Event runs well, it's probably not going to set up great for Webslinger. If Main Event's getting pressured early and there's somebody else that goes to the lead, or maybe I know Main Event was one of your other questions, so we can kind of maybe incorporate it here, or we can bring it back up if you want later. But Jerry the Nipper was in the same race with the Main Event last time. I could see him getting a little more aggressive and trying to be more forwardly placed. He got stuck in traffic. And a lot of times when a horse will get in traffic, their following race, their riders and their trainers will want to try to overcompensate. And sometimes that's good, right? Hey, we keep getting stuck in traffic. Let's just be a little faster early. Let's be a little more aggressive and see if we can stay out of some of that traffic. That might be the plan for Jerry the Nipper. I think between Main Event, even with a horse like Catnip, who's drawn to the outside, Cheryl Spate, I could see a few of these horses pushing the pace. So I don't think it's going to be quite as easy in this race as just Main Event all the way around.
Now, that was my next question, because Main Event is the pace. He's going to look to get to the lead. And we've kind of seen, not in this race, but the next race, kind of a bias to horses that get on the lead with the pace. You don't think Main Event can go pace to pace?
There are versions of the race where he could absolutely get out front. I think with his outside draw, he's probably going to have to work a little hard to get all the way over from out there. You know, you look at his last 2 races, in those races where he drew the inside a lot closer to where he didn't have to work very hard to get over. Now he's out wide, 1 or 2 other horses to the inside. Just like I mentioned, like a Jerry the Nipper, if they just try to hold their position a little bit and make him work, I think it's going to be a little too difficult for him. What ends up happening is it's another one of the, it's some of the situation where sometimes horses don't have enough speed to stay with Main Event early, but I believe that after it happens once or twice, so like when you play in an NBA series, for example, after game 1, if they beat you because you can't rebound, you might make an adjustment, right? And go a little bigger early, or try to double someone, or maybe you run your defense a little bit different, what you were doing. Maybe you don't help as high, but you make an adjustment. I think after watching a horse like Main Event go wire to wire, I feel like some of these horses who faced him last time or one of the last couple times, they will probably make an adjustment and not try to let him get away with that early on.
Now, the horse that I have the most question about is the 3 Interrogation. He's only been in 3 races. Now he's won all 3 of them. Is he live in this race, or is this just kind of a too big of a step up in competition?
I think he is a horse you have to use in your pick 4s and pick 5s. I feel like what we've seen from him, he has so much talent. I know when people are watching your shows, a lot of time they're watching a lot of other sports and they're, big sports fans. And it just reminds me of one of those players who's really talented, but he has these little injuries, right? A guy like Anthony Davis, even, who, I think it gets overblown sometimes, but you see great players who, gosh, you wish if they didn't have to race, and then it's almost like the race will take so much out of them that they need a few months off, and it's hard to string it together. That's what we've seen early on from Integration, but he's only raced 3 times. He started a little bit late He took a few months off. He's now had a few months off again. And his upside is so great that I don't want to leave him out of exotics. I'm going to be using him in because I think there is a chance that he is the goods. And the sky is the limit for a horse like this. He might just be better than everybody in this race. And we just haven't really seen it in a big enough sample size to understand or against quite this level, but he's a player.
Now, how are you betting this race?
So the way I stacked them up, I mentioned Webslinger as my top selection. I'm going to be using Jerry the Nipper and Warm Heart as my top 3. So those are the 3 I will use in all exotics. If you were playing a pick 4 or pick 5, those would be the 3 I would start with on my ticket. And then I know everybody plays bigger or smaller size, so it's different, but those would be the 3 I'd want to start with. I feel like you have Warm Heart, those 3, and Integration, who we were just talking about. Like Integration is the big wild card. So he is the horse who has the most ability to come out of this weekend and us going, oh my God, it's Integration. So 2, 3, 5, 9. I'm building everything around. I'm gonna make Main Event prove it to me. Yeah. I'm gonna make him prove it. Other horses that if you're playing deeper tickets, if this is a really big spread out race for you, horses that we may not have mentioned at all, Adamo and Masterpiece, they're both right next door to each other. These are horses that are deeper closers that don't have the ability to be as consistent because they get caught in traffic. They can't really go to the lead. They just don't have that in their arsenal. Mm-hmm. If the race shows up quick, early, they'll be like Webslinger and they'll come closing. I just trust Webslinger, and I think he will offer you better value and sort of give you the same profile there. So for exotics, we're going to build around Webslinger, Jerry the Nipper, Integration, and Warm Heart. We'll have a couple prices in there. We'll have the 2 very logical horses in there with Integration and Warm Heart.
Now, those are you answer my next question. Pick 4s, pick 5s. Who do we need? Because that's what I love doing. I love playing the pick 4, pick 5s, especially on big days like these. And also more so like an everyday Friday, everyday Saturday, Sunday, whatever day at Oaklawn, Gulfstream, whatever track. I'll play the pick 5. But on these bigger days, I kind of like to play the pick 4s and kind of spread out a little bit more.
Yep.
Because it's a little, I hate to use the term easier, but obviously you have to win 4 instead of 5. So playing the pick 4 is a little easier and it will still pay out on a day like today.
Yeah, and it depends on when you're the type of player, especially if you throw in long shots here and there in your pick 4s. If you have some nice prices throughout, it's easier. And some of these tracks too are starting to do a better job of having lower takeout pick 4s. They'll have the low takeout pick 5. For everyone, takeout that just means that you're getting more of your money back, right? Instead of 10% takeout like we have normally if you're betting a sports wager, minus 110. In horse racing, a lot of times you'll see things that are 20, 25%. And that becomes frustrating if you have 2 different wagers and one of them, they're going to only take out 10 or 12 or 15 and the other, they're going to take out 25. I'll probably put a lot more of my bankroll on the one where I'll get more money back, Yeah. And that's what ends up happening with the pick 5s. They also have one of my favorite new wagers. If you're someone, Eric, like you, I think, who maybe you'll play a little during the week, but you'll probably play more races on the weekend when you're at home and you're not working and you're sitting there watching other sports and other games. And you'll look at there's a carryover on something. Hey, should I play this carryover? Something like that. They have the coast to coast pick 5 wager now, every Saturday and Sunday for the next couple months. And it combines Santa Anita and Gulfstream Park. So there'll be 2 races from one and 3 from the other. It's a $1-based wager. So it's tough. It's not a 50 cent. So you can't really spread as much, but it's a low takeout. It's 14% takeout, and they pick the hard fields. And this is one of the races this weekend that's in the sequence. They have races 12 and 13 from Gulfstream Park, and they have races 6, 7, and 8 from Santa Anita. And that's one of those things where every weekend, that's just a fun wager to start with. If you don't play a bunch all over, you know that every Saturday and Sunday, they're going to have that thing. It'll always be a low takeout. And for me, it's sort of like one of my starting points when I'm handicapping every weekend now. It's a goal because the first 4 times I was 4 out of 5. Oof. And they pay 11,000, 22,000, 15,000. So I'll have a big one with my name on it soon.
Maybe I'll look to play that because I haven't been playing that one. I'm making a note of it right now. Now let's shift our attention over to the big one, the World Cup. The morning line favorite is National Treasure. Call me crazy, but I'm thinking about State taking a stand against the favorite. What do you think?
Yeah. I don't like him, and I don't really like him at all. I mentioned Warm Heart, who I think others will run better. Like if you're playing horses to win or in that race, I think you want to use Warm Heart more as in some of the under spots. In this race, I'm going to play against National Treasure. I think he's a little one-dimensional, to be honest. He doesn't really have races where he sits off horses. He's a need the lead type. And in this race, I don't think he's going to get the lead. Hoist the Gold is faster than him early. And some of the tools that I use actually think there's going to be like 5 or 6 horses all pretty close to National Treasure early on. I like Flavien Prat quite a bit as a jockey, and I trust him in a situation like this, but I've never been that high on this particular horse. He just lost to a very nice horse, Cody's Wish, who won a bunch of awards last night at the Eclipse Awards. In this particular race, though, I don't think he's going to get the trip that he got last time out. I feel like at least Hoist the Gold will be pushing him early. There'll be a horse like First Mission who shouldn't be too far out of it. We also have Skippy Longstocking from the outside, who was not too far behind National Treasure early in the Breeders' Cup Dirt Mile last time out. He's going to be right to the outside of him again. So, horse who I've never thought that much of. He won the Preakness, and that's sort of the reputation he lives off. But it wasn't a very strong edition of the Preakness. Actually, what was supposed to happen in the Preakness, First Mission was supposed to run in there. He got scratched a few days before that race. Yep. And he's been out. He was out of training and off. He didn't race from April to October. And so now First Mission, I actually think he might be the horse to beat. I actually think he is a horse who has the most upside because he missed a lot of time there. And now he's back. He might still be able to take steps forward that I'm not sure if National Treasure is going to take a step forward off of his most recent races.
You mentioned First Mission, obviously on X and online when I was doing my looking into this, it's kind of a horse I'm hearing a lot of buzz about. You mentioned it, was out till October. Before that, won the Lexington Stakes at Keeneland, out until October, won his first race back. But then when he got the step up at the Clark Stakes at Churchill Downs, he almost won it, didn't win it. How much should we worry about that? Or is that, that was Churchill. We're down in Gulfstream Park. This horse is live and he should be recovered from his time off.
Yeah, if we're going to have a knock on him, it might just be that at this point of his career, he may not really want to go this far. This may not be his best, going a mile and an eighth. He might be a horse that's best at a mile. So This might be stretching what he really wants a little. And maybe later on in his career down the line, he will have more foundation and he'll build up a little more stamina and he'll be fine. So I can understand that being a knock on him. At Gulfstream Park, it's one of those tracks that plays pretty well to speed horses and horses with his running style. It's just not as long of a stretch and not as much time that you normally see horses making up ground in the stretch. It just plays a lot better to horses with his style. I think the Clark, the reason why he might have lost that race was probably more of the time off and probably more to do with the injury. And it was just his second start back. and he still hasn't really been able to build up all that foundation yet. Now he's grown up a little bit more with a couple races under him. I like him in this spot. I think he's a major player and like a must use all over.
Now you mentioned Hoist of Gold. Obviously, when Johnny V came over, they changed the running style last time out at the Cigar Mile, being pushed more toward the front. Will that running style help here? And is this someone that's a big price that can pull off an upset?
Yeah, and I think a lot of it had to do with he was coming out of sprint races against really fast horses. So just think about it. If you're running and training with a bunch of sprinters and then you go and run more of a marathon, you're going to be way out in front, right? It's all going to be about the stamina. Can you stick? And on a muddy track, he was able to show a little bit more stamina. When it rains, half the horses in the field don't like it. So you end up seeing horses win like he did and draw off and win by big amounts. This is a really honest horse. A very, very cool horse. I was glad to see him get a big win like he got last time out. But that was such a big win, such a big effort. It's like playing the team that just won big on Monday Night Football, Eric.
Yeah.
You play them after that and sell when they're high, buy low, right?
That's what I love.
Right.
Let me ask you this. I'm looking right now at Bet Online, who has fixed odds up for this. They're showing an 8-1 price right now. Do you think that is a price that's going to dip lower, dip higher, or be right around that range on Hoist of Gold?
That feels fair. I think that feels fair. That's going to be right in that range. Like I wouldn't jump to play it or play against it because I think that'll probably be right in that range. Do they have a fixed price on Senior Buscador?
10-1.
See, I would play that. And we're going a little bit off script here, but this is kind of another question that you were going to ask me when you were talking about how I'm betting this race. I do think there's a horse that's very live in here, Senior Buscador. My major concern is he's 20-1 on the morning line. I talked about him on your show on Tuesday as I gave him out as a horse I liked. I think that how we've been talking about this race with Hoist the Gold, fast early, National Treasure, fast early, one or two others, maybe even a horse like Nimitz Class who draws the rail. He was a horse that you wanted to ask a question about too. He could be forwardly placed. I think they're going to go quick early. That will set up very well for Senior Buscador. He will come closing. And if you look at the races that he exits, Hoist the Gold beat him last time out, but Senior Buscador is never going to win a race if it's just a wire-to-wire winner. If it's just a horse that goes out front and goes all the way around, Senior Buscador will never beat them. He needs it to be a couple horses out front, going really fast, then he'll come flying. So if you try to look at some of his recent races, he wasn't getting the trip that he needs. Again, it's like a matchup, right? If you have a team that runs the ball really well, but they keep playing good run defenses, and all of a sudden they play against a good team, but they have a bad run defense, and you can just run the ball, hold the ball. It's sort of like that. You a lot of times you'll look at a horse like Senior Buscador, and he doesn't have as many recent wins, but it's just because he's facing horses like White Abario in the Breeders' Cup Classic, Slow Down Andy, Arabian Night, Go Rocket Ride. Those horses, any of those horses, if they were in a spot like this, they would be favored, heavily favored in there. So I look at the races he exits. He's been facing so much better horses than most of these that Senior Buscador will face. For him, it'll just come down to trip. Like the opposite of those speed horses. What's hard about playing a horse like this, though, he's very dependent on what others do. If other horses don't all go fast early, he won't have a shot.
Mm-hmm.
If they do, he will. So he's a harder horse to bet at a shorter price. If he's under 10-1, you probably don't want to bet him.
Mm-hmm.
If he is 10 and above, yep. And you absolutely want to throw him in your pick fours and pick fives because there's different the ways the race could be run. And if the race is run 100 different ways, well, there's probably 50 or 60 of them where he gets a really nice trip in here.
Yep. Now, I think in sports betting, I think one of the things why I'm able to do what I do is I'm not biased. I'm able to separate my money from bias. But it was about 2-3 years ago, I bet 3 Edward Zas, he's a jockey down at Gulfstream, 3 of his horses in a row. I think I $1 ticket. I think I got back $600 or something.
And you were sold.
I was sold. I was sold on him. He is actually in this race. He's my favorite jockey. Usually in the winter meet at Gulfstream,
he dominates.
Yeah,
he dominates in the fall, in the off meet, in the non-championship meet.
Off season. During this winter meet, he struggles a little bit.
Well, he's just a little more. Yeah, because when everybody comes, all the other big riders, he doesn't necessarily get the type of mounts that he does, right? He's on 15, 20-1 shots a lot more now versus he's on 3-1, 5-2s, right? In the other months. But what I love as a gambler, we have certain teams, football season's just ending. It feels like, well, I like the Chiefs. I think they're a good team. Patrick Mahomes is a good football player. Travis Kelce's a good tight end. Andy Reid's a good coach. But you and I don't really get to bet the Chiefs very often, right? Because they're usually favored in games. And those aren't the games that we're looking at. And I think the same is for like a lot of trainers and jockeys too. I don't have a lot of times where I'm playing Irad Ortiz Jr. because most of the time he's on the 5-2 or 3-1 horse that I'm trying to beat. And it's not that I don't think he's a good or capable rider or think that trainer is capable. My point is that Zayas is one of those riders that I always end up seeming like I gravitate towards also because he's on horses that are longer shots, but he just feels like he gives you a great run for your money. And he's an aggressive rider. So he will, at the very least, put horses in the race. Yeah. You have a shot. It's rare where you feel like you're watching a horse that he's riding and the horse is dead last and just never got in it. Maybe he doesn't win, but he gave you a chance. He was aggressive early, and that's got to be the plan with Nimitz class. He actually has a trainer change, and he comes into the George Weaver barn, and this barn has been rolling. And these horses like Nimitz class are always interesting me because he spent the bulk of his career at a little bit lesser tier tracks, Laurel and Parks. You see a race at Monmouth there. It's not that they don't have higher, like great races or, higher level racing, but just, he never really stepped up against some of the better. And sometimes with horses like this, that doesn't mean he can't.
Yeah.
Right. It doesn't mean he can't be competitive in this race. It just means he hasn't because he was for a barn that's based out there because his connections don't run a lot of races at Gulfstream. And so if you aren't a trainer that's comfortable going other places, you're probably not going to send your horses there even for the biggest races. You'll keep them in, maybe a little bit softer spots. This horse has won 11 of his 21 lifetime races. He's super honest, and he should be able to save ground from the rail. And the trainer change is very interesting to me, and I agree with you on Zayas. I think as a gambler, if I look at Zayas aboard a horse and that horse is 10 or 15-1, I think he's going to give me a shot.
I love playing him when he goes to other tracks too. When he goes to other tracks, he's just
people don't know him. The name, he's not a national name. He's not a Joe El Rosario or someone who goes here, Gafflion. Like people know when those jockeys travel. He doesn't quite have that yet. And for gamblers, that's a good thing.
How are you betting this race?
Key race, like you mentioned, in all of those exotics, right? Pick fours, pick fives, any type of pick threes, anything you're closing, You're going to be closing it right here in race 13 because this is the last race on the card. The horses who I absolutely need in my exotics, there's 3 of them. First Mission, we mentioned, Senor Buscador. They'll be totally opposite ends of the spectrum. First Mission should be close up early. Senor Buscador, he'll be coming from way out of it. And the third one is Trademark. He will be sort of in the middle. So from a style standpoint, I will hope that First Mission is sitting second, probably sitting third. I'd love to see Hoist the Gold on the lead, National Treasure and Hoist the Gold kind of pushing each other, and then First Mission not far behind them. Then I want to see Trademark sitting in about 5th, just not too far behind First Mission. And then after everyone else, Senor Buscador is going to look like he's in a race all by himself, but way back behind everyone. But if they go fast enough, he'll come flying and he'll give you a nice run for a nice thrill late. So hopefully we'll have the horse sitting close, another one a little bit more mid-pack, and then one coming from the back. So that way, if we're closing this race in a pick 4, I feel like I'm alive in this race and I've got one horse that can win in however this race ends up. If there's not a lot of speed, First Mission should be close. He should be right there and able to pass Hoist the Gold or National Treasure. Trademark, he could sit right behind them. He's been in really nice form as of late. He just won at Churchill. He didn't run great at Keeneland before that, but he was wide. And prior to that, he had a string of really nice races. I think he's a little under the radar too. So I'll play those 3. Maybe hook up at least like a try with the 3 of them. And if Senor Buscador is 10-1 and above, I'll play him to win. I have a feeling he's probably going to be closer to 5 or 6-1.
Now, is there any other horse that you didn't mention with those 3 that if I'm going to play a bigger pick 4, pick 5, have a group pick 6 ticket that I need to make sure that I include?
Yeah, I'd say Grand Aspen. This is a Pletcher horse who's kind of sneaky. He just lost to O'Connor last time out, but O'Connor snuck up the rail and got a really nice trip that day. And Grand Aspen looks like the type of horse who's just getting better and better and better. That was only his 4th start on the dirt. He had been running on the grass. And you just sort of go through his entire career. He never runs a bad race. All of his recent form for Pletcher, he's either winning these races or he's beaten by a neck. He's just beaten. So he could be one of those horses that maybe gets a little forgotten about. I will definitely have him on 1 or 2 pick 4s and pick 5s.
Gino, I'd like to thank you for coming on the podcast, talking some horse racing, sharing how you're going to be playing the big races on the Pegasus card. Why don't you tell everyone where they can find you on social media, and when your podcast comes out, you're doing some stuff from Santa Anita and Stable Duo. Why don't you tell everyone about that as well?
Yeah, it's a big weekend too. There's actually a contest tomorrow that's called the Pegasus World Cup Betting Championship. It's a $6,000 entry. So it's a big contest. They have $250,000 plus in prizes. Last year they had $280,000. The winner won $125,000. It's one of the biggest betting contests of the year. It's massive. And it's at Gulfstream. You can play either at Gulfstream, at Santa Anita, or online at ExpressBet. So I have had some videos and stuff out. For a lot of these big contests, they have qualifiers leading up. So that way you don't have to spend the $6,000 if you can't afford it. They had qualifiers for $80 to where you'd win, you play for 80, then you qualify into a $1,000 tournament. And then from there you qualify. So for $80, you could win into a $6,000 tournament, which is nice. That's the way I approach those. And that's what G Said Podcast. Anywhere you get your podcast. Been posting a lot of stuff on social media. Eric joins me every week. Just a couple more weeks of football to talk about, and then we'll shift on over and start talking a little NBA and some college. And I'm curious in the next couple weeks to talk about the coaching change for the Bucks with you and pick your brain on that a little bit.
I definitely have some thoughts on that, but we can talk about that on your podcast, my friend.
It's a tease.
Make sure, actually, on this podcast, Dalton Sell from the BehindTheBucks.com, him and I talked about the coaching change. So,
well, there you go. Boom.
Yeah, on this podcast. Gino, thanks for coming on, and we'll talk soon, my friend.
Absolutely. Anytime, buddy.